Maiduguri, the Borno State capital, is facing a devastating flood exactly 30 years after a similar disaster occurred in 1994. Now, the Alau Dam collapsed due to heavy rainfall, submerging 70% of the city under water. The flood has caused widespread destruction and displacement, with many people forced to flee their homes, and government has opened IDP camps to assist displaced persons, and aid agencies have deployed volunteers to help with registration and relief efforts. Key locations include the Shehu of Borno's Palace and University of Maiduguri Teaching Hospital have been affected, and there has been significant loss of lives and property damage as well. Now, to discuss this, I'm joined by three guests. We have Umar Saleh, Executive Director, Eco Rural Climate Challenge Awareness from Kano. We also have Tine Agernore, Co-Lead Environment Thematic Area Women Environmental Program in Abuja. And we also have, we'll be joined by Alawiyya Baba Musa, founder, Arewa Women Initiative for Climate Change Advocacy in Borno State. But for now, thank you for joining us, gentlemen.
Pleasure to be here. Good evening, Nigerians.
All right, so let me begin with you, Mr. Agernore. Now, the Alau Dam collapsed due to heavy rainfall, and it's said to have submerged 70% of the city underwater. Now, can you tell us, is it possible for climate change, to have contributed to the collapse that led to the dam being collapsed and led to the flooding in Maiduguri?
Okay, thank you, Dashen. I would like to approach that question from two angles. Yes, I agree that climate change is a major reason for the collapse of the dam. But I also want to look at it from the point of what immediate actions led to the collapse of the dams. The dam, one of the spillways got broken, and that is why we are experiencing the flooding, which has caused various negative impacts in Borno. So in as much as we can lay claims to the fact that climate change, which led to excessive rains, may have been the reason why the flood waters or the dam overflowed, there is also the angle to which the authorities responsible for the maintenance of the dam may not have lived up to their job responsibilities, because it is expected that dam waters are released gradually. And so the thinking is that if the authorities responsible for the management of the dam were living up to their job responsibilities, then the waters of the dam would have been released gradually. And even though we had excessive rains in the town, we wouldn't have had a situation whereby the integrity of the dam structures were compromised, leading to the breakage of one of the spillways, which has led to the current crisis that we are experiencing in the city. So it's a two-way thing, I must say.
Okay. Now, let's hear from Umar. Umar, what are your thoughts on what Tine has actually said, and what role do dams like Alau Dam play in aggravating flood risk, especially when they collapse?
Okay, thank you, Aditi. I want to start by sympathizing with the people of Borno State and Nigeria at large for this devastating thing that happened yesterday. It is sad. I think we are forgetting the history, since you've said from the background that 30 years ago, same thing had happened. So when we look at it from the angle of climate change, which we say is a long-term shift, which start from 30 years, so which means you can take it there. In another direction, you will see that there are a lot of anthropogenic component of it that really contributed to this. If you look at what Lake Chad was in 1960 and what it is today, you know that definitely there are blockages, there are short, smaller dams, which of course, before it used to go directly. Incessant flood will never stop if we didn't look inward, let's say from Kano River down to Hadeja Nguru wetland, because those are the canals that, so when you look at those places, you will know that there are a lot of blockages, there are a lot of poor waste management system, because the issue of waste cannot, state government nowadays cannot just take this alone. There has to be a clear private partnership where a very resilient and green infrastructure needs to be provided, especially Borno State is a well densely populated city, coupled with the migration and a lot of things that happen around Boko Haram. So you see that there are squatter settlements, there are a lot of things that need to be put in place. Yes, I had the DG in the morning justifying some of the things, but we know that environment.
Umar, now speaking of densely, Borno being densely populated, how would urban planning and infrastructure development have reduced the flood vulnerability, considering that 70% of the city was submerged?
We have to deviate from the conventional drainage system. We have to deviate from the conventional waste management system where there's no recycling, proper recycling method, where there's no proper urban planning. Because, like I said, I think the current governor has tried in making sure that the squatter settlement has been displaced, but with a lot of low budget on environment. Naturally, environment is suffering a setback on its budget. So I think if you maybe x-ray from the angle of state government officials, they may tell you that there are no releases. Even if they have a better policy of which they want to construct a new infrastructure, but are there releases for those budgets? There may be good policy, there may be plans, but you know, you have to have, Borno State is used to working with international donors.
Yeah.
They can well look at that. It's not new to them. So because Borno has suffered a lot, so it's just a one way for them to call on the international community, those that can give them a green infrastructure. World Bank and America has a certified building codes for this kind of situation.
Okay.
If the state government will leverage on the existing green infrastructure shift, definitely we can have a kind of a way out.
All right. Now let's forward that same question to Tine. Tine, go ahead and tell us, what you think urban planning and infrastructure development would have actually done to reduce the flood vulnerability.
Okay, thank you again, Dashen. My colleague has almost said it all. And just to also add that we may not be so aware of the quality of drainages that are existent in Maiduguri, the Borno State capital. And as it were, one is inclined to think that there is a possibility that the drainages within the city may not have also been well evacuated. Because if the government has plans in place, preparedness or disaster or flood preparedness plans in place, then there were the tellers which had started from last week, and actions would have been taken to avert that. So I am thinking that there are defaults in the planning in the first instance, because the thoughts or the future projections, which are mostly needed to be taken in place while planning the cities, may not have been adequately followed. We see a situation where in Nigeria, a vast majority of times, infrastructure projects are implemented in a hurry. a meeting is held and everybody decides that it's okay that we go ahead and implement this planning. And the experts who are required to be brought to the table to be able to look at the implications of those various infrastructures on the climate and to see how resilient those structures can be to future climatic events. Those actions are not taken, and then we just go ahead to implement these issues or these projects. And so oftentimes when issues like this come up in future, because these were not taken into account at the planning stages of this urban infrastructure, they are not able to withstand these issues. And so the call will be on the authorities who are responsible for urban planning to make urban planning a more inclusive process, so that all stakeholders who have insights or who have valuable input to be made on how urban infrastructure can be made more resilient to climate shocks such as these are brought to the table, and their views and their expertise taken into account and mainstreamed into the planning of urban infrastructure to avert these sort of issues.
Yes, indeed. Now, this is the reason why, for years we've been clamoring for the government to be proactive. It's not all about coming and predicting the flawed patterns and everything, but you need to be proactive as well, so that it can actually cushion the effects of such flood. Now, but I'm actually being told that Alawiyya has joined us. Alawiyya, if you can hear me, thank you so much for joining us. All right, I'm told we lost her as well. All right, let's move back to you, Umar. Tine. All right, so Tine, back to you. What are the implications, or what implications does climate change have for water management and dam safety?
Okay, the implications are variegated in nature. The impacts of climate change, which we've been experiencing in Nigeria, have affected the quantity and then quality of water that is available for life's processes. I will take agriculture, for instance. Climate variability has led to an increase in rainfall in some other locations across Nigeria, while the same impacts of climate change have also led to droughts in certain communities or in certain locations. And in locations where there are droughts, it is only normal, I beg your pardon, that crop plants there will suffer loss of water and will have crops which are cultivated die. This has grave implications for food security and for nutrition security and for the health and well-being of the persons within those communities. On the other hand, in communities or locations where the impacts of climate change has led to excessive flood, like we are experiencing in Borno State now, we have the unfortunate situation whereby crop fields are washed away by water. And so it also brings its own negative implications on availability of food, and then, of course, for nutrition security too. Then away from agriculture, we are also looking at the quantity and quality of water that is available for consumption or for drinking, as the case may be. In locations suffering the impacts of drought, we will find out that there is less water available for people to drink, and people may resort to drinking water from sources that are unclean. And we are aware of the many diseases that may result as an impact of that. And for us at WEP, as a feminist organization, we are also deeply concerned about the impact of these climate emergencies on women and girls. We do know that when there is adequate water, women are better able to take care of themselves, especially when they are menstruating. But in a situation where we do not have adequate water as a result of drought, we see that women are not able to manage their menstruation properly, same as girls, and they might resort to not taking their baths, not washing their innerwears, and this can expose them to organisms that can create disease and further compound the other challenges which they are having as a result of droughts, which we mentioned earlier, which is food insecurity. If you move over to communities now which are suffering floods, as we have in Maiduguri now, you will see that both clean water sources have been contaminated. It's unfortunate. We've heard that these flood waters have also affected the cemetery, and it is only proper to also highlight that even the Sokowe pits that are in the entire town have been destroyed by these waters. So looking at these flood waters now, you can only imagine the level of mix of maybe feces, and then harmful bacteria and the likes which are in this mix. And these very flood waters have also contaminated the drinking water sources which are available. And one begins to wonder where the residents of Maiduguri will be able to get clean water to drink, where the women and girls will be able to get clean water to cook meals with which they can eat and survive, and where women and girls will also be able to get water to take care of themselves and their children, and then to live healthily. And so we see a situation where the impacts of climate change leading to flood waters on the one hand, and then droughts on the other hand, have various implications on the health, the education, and then the general well-being of all persons, especially women and girls and children, who we know are currently suffering the impact.
And let's not also forget, that some corpses were also washed ashore, and it would also lead to a lot of health health issues.
Implications.
Yes.
Exactly.
So let's speak to Alawiyya now. Alawiyya, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
All right. Thank you for joining us. All right, so Tine has actually said a whole lot about, the health implications of flooding and how it affects, women and children, or women and girls. But sadly, so many people have actually been displaced at the moment. So can you go ahead and speak to us, on the health impacts of flooding, considering that so many things have been washed ashore, from corpses to feces to bacteria and a whole lot. Okay, we apologize for that. She seems to have serious network issues. Coming back to you, Tine, if you can hear me. Hello, Tine, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes, I can hear you clearly.
All right. So can you tell us what was the possibility of communities being able to adapt, to increased flood risk or the impact of a collapsed dam?
Okay, so I also am not aware of the extent to which the communities around the Alau Dam may have raised concerns about the fact that the floodwaters were seeping into their homes. I am not privy to that sort of information, but I do know that communities have a responsibility of serving as critical early warning agents. One will expect that as soon as they may have noticed abnormal movements of the water from the dam, they would have escalated these happenings or concerns.
There were also lots of warnings from the meteorological agency as well.
There were warnings. And so I am not able to tell the extent to which the community members were also able to escalate this to the government authorities And if they were also aware of the preparedness actions or the adaptation actions to take, like moving from flood-prone areas to safe highlands. But again, even when we say that the flood in Borno has defied conventional thinking, because I have read from many sources that places where the community members had hitherto ran to for safety, which were before now seen as safe highland areas, were also flooded. And so the Maiduguri flood is one that has defied conventional flooding approaches in a way, and it only calls us to action to think out of the box and not think that areas which have been considered as safe before may no longer be safe, going by the scale or magnitude, so to speak, of the rainwaters and the flood waters, so to speak, that came as
Yeah,
a
yes.
result of that.
Speaking of the magnitude, I was actually going to ask, exactly how does climate change affect the frequency and severity of extreme weather events or even patterns? But let me forward that question to Umar. Hello, Umar, can you hear me? Can you unmute your device? Yes, I can hear you now. Go ahead.
Can you repeat your question, please?
Oh yeah, I was asking. He actually talked about the magnitude of rains, and I was asking how exactly climate change affects the frequency and severity of extreme weather events or weather patterns.
Like when we look at issue of the extreme weather event issue, we look at the erratic water supply rainfall in among the places where we never thought they would have drought, like Taraba recently had issue of drought. Adamawa, that has Alau Dam, there was drought. So the issue of extreme weather event is as a result of this shift in the climate change pattern, where globally we've seen how flood is devastating even those countries that we thought have prepared so much to accommodate or to absorb the shock. So it's a natural cause that we see the melting of ice, like we know forests and rivers are interwoven globally. So once there is increase in the rainfall pattern in where it's not expected, in fact, Maiduguri was not even on the red light though there was flood last year, but not. It hasn't constantly the flood warning.
It wasn't as extensive as this, yeah.
Yeah. So I think there's a diversion. So with this, the rainfall pattern is becoming unpredictable. So as such, we just have to prepare for the worst. We cannot just rely on maybe the predictions, because most of the predictions has failed us. They have tried, but if you look at some of the places, there is a shift in the pattern of the rainfall across the country, actually.
Of course. All right, let's come back to you. Okay, we're still talking. Please go ahead. Apologies.
Yeah. If you look at the fear, when you look at the level of it's terrible. I was in Kogi yesterday, they were like, why Maiduguri? Maiduguri was not expected to have this at the earliest thing. While Kogi is also afraid now to all these emergencies and surprises. So I think we need to come down to the drawing board and avoid the conventional literatures and just go to the practical aspect of it.
All right, Tine, let's come back to you. Now let's talk about the economic implications, and how it can actually be reduced. We know that homes was affected homes were affected, institutions, government agencies, and other businesses as well, were affected by this flooding when some of these places were actually submerged. So how can the economic impact be reduced? And you did talk about food security earlier as well.
Okay, so the state and the nation at large will suffer grave adverse impacts as a result of the flooding incidents. And the path to economic as well as livelihood recovery for persons who have been affected directly by these flooding incidents will be like in a continuum. As it were now, I am aware that the National Emergency Management Agency is working extensively to evacuate community members to safer areas. I'm aware of camps that have been opened. I'm also aware of the directive by the President, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, that government agencies should support response efforts in the Maiduguri flooding. And in the range of these response efforts will be moving affected persons to safer areas, providing them with the basic necessities that they require in a humanitarian situation like this, which includes both food and non-food items. Necessarily, as it were now, affected persons need food, they need shelter, and they need clothing. They will also need access to safe hygiene facilities like toilets in the locations where they are, and they will need water. And while this immediate response effort is ongoing, there will be the need for a medium-term strategy to also be activated. This is with the thinking that the Borno State government must have had an emergency response preparedness plan already. I believe that that plan should be in place, but in a situation where that plan is not in place, which I doubt, it would be good for the state to convene experts across various fields to see how a strategy can be put in place to look at ways of fast-tracking the drainage of these flood waters and begin to plan towards making investments in the recovery of what may have been lost in terms of infrastructure, in terms of food and the likes, and necessarily acknowledging that Borno State has suffered the impact of violence over the years. This is like an added layer of suffering, so to speak. Okay. And so they would necessarily also require the support of international NGOs like Umar mentioned earlier. Yeah. And so they would need to bring
we'll actually come back we'll come back to humanitarian aid and also support from international NGOs right after the break. You're still watching the conversation. We'll be back in a bit. Welcome back and thank you for staying with us. If you're just joining us, we've been discussing the devastating flood crisis in Borno State. Well, I still have my guests who have been sharing their insights. We still have Umar Saleh, Executive Director, Eco-Rural Climate Challenge Awareness, Kano. And we also have Tine Agernore, Co-Lead Environment Thematic Area, Women Environmental Program in Abuja. All right, so just before we went on the break, Umar, to you now. Tina was actually talking about humanitarian aid and international agencies coming to the aid of the people of Borno State. So I would actually like to ask, because after the flood happened, I think there was a news going round that the vice president, who was the former deputy governor of deputy governor of Borno State, said they would be delivering 50 trucks of rice to Borno, and a lot of people, especially on social media, were unhappy about it, saying that not everything can be fixed with rice. So I would definitely like to know or hear from you how you think our governments and aid agencies, can respond with compassion and effectiveness to the flood crisis.
You see, I watch a clip. They say everything about Nigeria is rice, rice. This is just to tell you the level of poverty that we are in. And there are projections that in the next 6 months, there would be an increase in the food prices, which, of course, those projection is also increasing this level of suffering. But 50 trucks of rice, how many people do we have that are affected when you have more than 30,000 houses? So when you divide, each truck maybe has 600 bags. So multiply 600 bags by this number and see how many people. And what is the criteria of the distribution? Is it going to be fair and just? Who are the communities going to be involved? Although, of course, Maiduguri, people are used to this kind of a thing, and the governor has been, or state governors have been sharing, distributing rice, but it should go more than rice because this rice is just one component. Yes, food is very important. We have to look at water and sanitation, shelter, of course, psychological problems, that trauma that people are going through. So there are a lot of things that people needed. There should be a subsidy, so much subsidy that people will feel the impact of the relief, because the protocols involved in bringing 50 trucks of rice. Some people may even want to say, if they know the protocols and the amount spent to distribute the rice, people will say, please leave it. Maybe there should be a better way, since there are other humanitarian ways that previous government and probably the current one is doing. We may have to look at beyond sharing rice, beyond sharing. Of course, people needed food, but where are they even going to the food? Give me rice, and my house is submerged. So what do you expect? So there are issues of emergency health issues, emergency water supply, medications, and of course, it's a good start, maybe from his own pocket, because probably the relief NEMA is under his office directly, but it should go way beyond that, because we are talking about 30,000 houses submerged. So if you just quantify this with the amount of things that rice is given, actually it will not go in any way to support these people. But like I said, there should be an emergency call to the international communities, civil society organizations. Of course, I have seen groups, civil society organizations and foundations looking for donations, but how clean are they? How are we sure? Are there monitoring mechanisms that would check those people that are even collecting the relief funds to give the people? So I think this goes way beyond. There should be a community mapping from bottom up to the top, because there should be a holistic approach in terms of this. There should have been already.
They should have been proactive, yes.
Yeah, they should have been proactive, actually, because before this rice could come, of course, people must have died. We're talking about crocodiles are just going through houses, a lot of other reptiles. So can't we look at that again? So I think we should go beyond that. This is just to show the level that even the elites are still after rice in Nigeria. So we need to go proactive, better than this way.
All right, let's hear from Tine. Same question. We also know that President Tinubu, when it happened, he called for an immediate evacuation and also rescue efforts. How can government and aid agencies respond effectively to flood disasters?
Okay, this is deeply concerning, and I will take it up from where my colleague Umar stopped. The key thing there is for the state and the relevant agencies to activate the emergency response plan if it was in place in the state. What an emergency response plan captures are projections about possible future emergencies that can happen and then the various actions that each stakeholder can take. An emergency response plan will typically detail, for instance, if a flood emergency happens in Borno State, which of the ministries will be responsible for providing water, which of the ministries will be responsible for providing health. I know that the lead ministry for water would be the Ministry for Water Resources, but who are the other actors, both state and non-state, that can support with the provision of these needed items in a humanitarian setting like this? So that will be the first thing for the state to do, or which I believe that the state is doing already. And I do also know that the projections in the emergency response plan may not have envisaged the magnitude of the flooding disaster. And so where the current plans that are on ground are lacking in terms of the projection, it will require the holding of an emergency meeting of all the actors who are captured in the emergency response ecosystem of Borno State to discuss how they can address these issues real time, as it were. And necessarily, the emergency response plans also capture non-state actors, which I mentioned, would involve community-based organizations, faith-based organizations, national and international NGOs, whose mandates fall into the different areas that will be captured, be it in health, be it in provision of water, sanitation, and hygiene, be it in the provision of food. And so when these plans are activated by the relevant agencies, it provides that it provides a situation where all that is required to be taken care of in a holistic manner that sees to the dignifying way of supporting affected communities to come out of emergency situations like this, or to deal with emergency situations like this, is adequately taken into place. And so my call will be for the relevant actors, both state and non-state, but led by the state, to activate whatever plans it is that are currently on ground. And if there are any gaps in these plans, then solicit for support from other relevant state and non-state actors who will be willing to provide much needed support to help with the current crisis on ground.
All right, now Umar, now is it possible, can flooding or flood risk be reduced through ecosystem-based adaptation, like forestation and the rest?
I think we don't have a problem with that. Like I said earlier, it is all about the implementation of the policy. Remember, in April 2011, there was a Lake Chad Water Charter, where all the neighboring countries come to agree. If you go through the document, it was well comprehensive that everything was stated as to management of the water, as to emergency response. So I think there's a kind of a neglect from the implementation side. Sometimes we enjoy bringing regional cooperation, but without issue of proper implementation, because some of the agreement or ambitions are just not implementable. So there's equity and the discharge of water. There are a lot of things in the charter, water charter for the Lake Chad Commission, which of course it was so explicit that if the state government will go through the Lake Chad Charter, which was so clear, was signed, it came into force in 2011. So I think we are neglecting, we are leaving some kind of traces of history. We just maybe concentrate on more of the celebration than looking down at the action plan. Well, you can have a policy, but you need to develop an action plan that will suit each region, not to make it a kind of bogus that, yes, there are peculiarities. Each country has its own ways and manner as to which they implement.
Yeah,
There are
of course.
some that the level of corruption is higher than others. So meeting with those, especially financial contribution, as to which, when you look at, say, case of UNFCC with the loss and damage issues, so it's all went down to this kind of charter. So I think Borno State government and probably the neighboring countries and the states should converge again and look at those documents which they made promises inside, which was so comprehensive and beautiful agreements and submissions that will, if you, by looking at it, you will enjoy reading it and having peace in your mind that at least the vulnerable groups have been protected, but it's just been protected in the book. So implementation is one key thing that that's why I'm happy the issue of Nigerian climate change governance project that is in the pipeline by FCDO. Maybe they will extend and look at through all these kind of issues, which is very crucial to solving all these kind of problems.
Hopefully so. Now, while we wind up, let's hear from you, Tine, your final thoughts, and also, in your expert's opinion, what will be the likely social and cultural impact of this incident on affected communities?
So I'll address the question in reverse order. The social impacts are that families have been displaced, children have been displaced. I do know that families will also be separated with all the attendance issues that come with it. Girls and women will be exposed to the unfortunate incidents of sexual and gender-based violence in the various camps where they are. And this is where protection actors will need to step up their game to protect women from sexual and gender-based violence. We are also aware that in the provision of humanitarian aid, some actors may also take advantage of women and girls to maybe get sex for food, or sex for parts, or sex for other humanitarian aid assistance. These are all the social issues that come with it. Women will have mental challenges. They will have traumas which will require psychosocial counseling for them to deal with. The same with children. Children have been no longer attending school. They are no longer in their communities. Community activities have been thwarted. And so people will suffer different levels of trauma as the case may be. And it will be important for the relevant agencies and actors to see to how provision can be made for psychosocial counseling of all the persons who have been displaced and affected directly and indirectly. And responding to the first question, my final word will be that there is a need to put all mechanisms in place to translate policy actions or policy statements or policy documents to action. And what we see from our working with decision makers is that, unfortunately, in as much as climate change has been affecting different parts of the world, and we have come face to face with the adverse impacts of climate change, it is unfortunate that many a person in decision-making positions are not fully aware of what climate change is and how climate change happens. Oftentimes, you take a conversation on climate change to a particular decision maker and then they dismiss it. They feel it is just hogwash, or it is just something that has been machinated by civil society actors or persons from the Western world to make money. But we have come face to face with the awful realities of climate change, which we are seeing in the excessive flooding that has happened. So necessarily, I will emphasize that it is important to implement targeted awareness-raising actions, especially for decision makers. Because if a member of the State House of Assembly or of the National Assembly is not fully aware of what climate change is, because oftentimes they say the climate change thing is an abstract thing, but it is indeed an abstract phenomenon which we are feeling its negative impact by virtue of its adverse impact, like the flooding, which we are unfortunately experiencing now. So we do need, as actors and as stakeholders, to find innovative and strategic ways of communicating climate change to decision makers, to critical decision makers, so that they are able to take proactive measures and invest adequate resources in all the response actions that are required of a global crisis to the magnitude of climate change. And so for me, amidst the many other actions that need to be taken, awareness raising, which is targeted at critical decision makers, will be necessary as a take-off point.
All right, awesome. Now let's hear from you, your final thoughts in 1 minute, Umar.
One thing we do emphasize at probably not state actors level is to ensure that there's transparency in all that we're doing. Like there has to be bottom up. Local NGOs, CBOs must be transparent in even supporting the vulnerable groups. Once there's confidence and there's transparency in the process, there are a lot of burdens will be like relief from government. Civil society can get all those support as usual, but actually there are no clear M&E or strategy that the state government would come and co-create with civil society, understand their function, how they get their funding. When you said you are looking for funds to support your community, you must be checked. So I think there are a lot of things that needs to be done around transparency issue, and budget processes needs to be looked at, especially issue of on environmental budget.
Absolutely.
Once your environmental budget is standard, the health budget will go low. So I think we need to look at that and co-create. It's a cross-cutting issue that needs to be addressed. But transparency is key to all those kind of things.
All right. Well, thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us at this time and also speaking to us so in-depthly, on this particular topic. Umar Saleh, Executive Director, Eco-Rural Climate Challenge Awareness, Kano, and Tine Agernore, Co-Lead, Environment Thematic Area, Women Environmental Program, Abuja. We appreciate you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dashen. Thank you.
Well, with that, we've come to the end of the conversation. Do not forget to follow us on our social media platforms. We are at News Central TV. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Dashen Usman. Take care.